Hello everyone. My video today is based on an essay I wrote for Fabulously Feminist magazine a few years ago, which I edited up into this presentation after learning a lot more about the incel community thanks to a lot of excellent work here on YouTube by people such as ContraPoints and many others. This is the sort of thing that I needed back in high school myself when I was a bit of a dateless wonder. So I hope the theory makes sense, and I hope the practice helps people to avoid some suffering, perhaps, and maybe even avoid the incel ideology altogether. So I guess this is my contribution to that conversation. I hope you enjoy. There isn't anybody involved in the dating game who hasn't felt the sting of a rejection from a prospective partner. But why are some people able to handle it so gracefully while others aren't? Why do some people stoically trudge along in the face of a no while others literally resort to murder? The web of factors is dense and complex, and I'm not going to complain I've got it sussed out completely, but I do have some theories which may prove helpful as maps of the cultural and mental landscape surrounding rejection. I also have some proven ways of resisting the pitfalls shown on those maps, or climbing out of them in case you've fallen in. We all want to live in a world that honors love, sex, consent, and everything that goes with that without shame or fear. If not, then this may be the wrong video for you. It is my belief that the fear and shaming of sexuality helps nobody except those who use those responses to sexuality to gain power over others. Getting rid of the stigma surrounding accepting and seeking the sex, love, and affection we want must go hand in hand with getting rid of the stigma of rejecting any sex, love, or affection that we don't want. Nobody wants to be slut or kink shamed, and likewise, nobody deserves any flack for rejecting a given person, as long as they're kind. If we can remember that, we may go some way to bringing about a more sex-positive world. A part of living in that world is the fact that at some point or other our advances will be rejected, either in whole or in part. If consent means anything to us at all, we need to act on those rejections. We need to be responsible and stop making advances. High-pressure sales techniques or interrogation about motives have no place in the aftermath of a romantic rejection. We ought to be able to handle a no, even from somebody we love or want desperately, even at a time we feel like we need whatever we're asking for, because consent matters no matter what. Some people try to minimize the sting by denying the hurt of a rejection. I think it's wrong to say that rejection isn't a big deal. In the moment, it may feel like a huge deal, like your whole evening or week or year or life may have hinged on it. You may be embarrassed or confused. You may even feel less like your real self. In the fullness of time, it may seem less weighty or immediate, but it still hurts. And it seems to me that many people have trouble dealing with that hurt. It also seems to me that the culture at large is not much help. The art of accepting rejection gracefully is an exercise in taking other people seriously and remembering that their desires are every bit as valid as our own. I originally wanted to call this piece Handling Rejection like a hero, but I changed that for several reasons I'd like to unpack just right up front. First off, the hero angle implies an extraordinary person doing extraordinary things. As my friend Vincent pointed out to me, handling rejection responsibly and with a degree of grace should not be extraordinary. Moreover, I imagined this article at the outset as something aimed mostly at men, but everybody gets rejected. Everybody gets their hearts broken, and singling out dudes for special help with it doesn't strike me as particularly productive, even if we are the ones who seem to act out worse in response. Part 1. High stakes. Our culture seems to place great weight on falling in love, settling down, finding a successful long-term romance. If you doubt this, go to the movies. The standard reward of heroism: love, sex, family. The goal of most rom-com characters, even today: love, sex, family. Even to those of us who may question or resist these cultural currents, these ideas can be maddeningly present and persistent. Imagine the superego, the little internal voice of the culture at large, making a Faustian bargain. You get to feel like a good, complete person if you're making progress toward a stable, monogamous, romantic, and sexual lifestyle. If you're not, you don't get to feel good. This insidious deal may lead us to invest undue emotional resources on what ought to be minor crushes, summer flings, one-night stands, or even common friendliness. Gender identity also plays its hand, with the culture at large insisting that a real woman or a real man is by definition sexually attractive and romantically successful to and with people of the opposite sex. Many of us have flubbed a simple task, looking desperately for a phone that's in our hand already, locking ourselves out of the apartment, and ruefully thought, look at me, I fail at life, blah. Maybe you even posted or tweeted or something, I fail at life, I locked myself out of the apartment, The temptation to think in these kinds of terms is much greater and more pointed in light of a romantic rebuff. Nobody likes to fail at mundane tasks that we know we're capable of doing right. The idea that a romantic rejection represents not yet having the skills or attributes needed to get a yes fuels all kinds of self-improvement projects, from garden variety gym memberships to crash diets to the cringeworthy terror circus that is the pickup artist industry. Most people understand that attraction is a slippery fish that can't just be put down to a few factors. But that can be hard for people to accept, especially if our self-esteem isn't high to begin with. Instead of realizing that most rejections are nobody's fault, we may feel tempted to blame parts of ourselves or parts of the world at large that we already don't like. This train of thought can lead down very dark paths, among them depression, anxiety, anger, and rage. What we must not lose is the basic footing of self-esteem that says, among other things, that we are worthy of love. Too often, when we are rejected, we feel not merely unlovable or unsexy, but also unworthy, just because one person that you like, or that you think you like, doesn't think you're right for them, does not make you unworthy of love in any larger sense. It still sucks, but we need to keep our perception of its suckiness in check. Section 2. Poor baby. Self-pity in the face of a rejection is completely understandable, and up to a point, it's fairly reasonable. It's bound to be a factor to some degree in any disappointing circumstance, and as we discussed above, the pressure to be a romantic success can compound our disappointment and self-pity. Despite the romantic, rugged cultural idea of being independent and not needing pity, there are legitimate settings where self-pity means taking care of oneself, being one's own friend, one's own parent, one's own lover. And for those of us who don't necessarily like the image that the term self-care conjures, a brief reminder.
Your coping mechanisms are your decision and your responsibility. Some people may want a hot soup and massage. Some people will want to fix a truck engine or scream their lungs out at a concert. Anything that replenishes you is self-care, and some of us may need to feel a measure of self-pity in order to get around to it. Heaven knows I do. What we need to avoid is an excess of self-pity, or that kind of self-pity that leads us to misinterpret and misattribute the actions of the person who rejected us in the first place. Brother.
Sometimes people will try to cheer us up after being snubbed by claiming the person who rejected us is just a dick, a bit, an unfeeling bad thing with unreasonable opinions that we shouldn't take seriously. Our friends clearly mean well, and hearing it in the moment may well help get us out of the initial funk. The barb is the tendency to take your friend's assertion literally, to begin to believe it. The beliefs about one person may grow if we keep getting rejected and become our go-to assertions about anyone who rejects us. We have seen what happens when people who start thinking this way get together, encourage one another in their delusions, and fire one another up enough. Misinterpretation and what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error are staggeringly easy pits to fall into. Take the cute woman in the flannel shirt at the other table in this coffee house. Is she wearing that flannel because she's an insufferable hipster? Does it belong to her boyfriend? Does it belong to her girlfriend? Is she showing off her Scottish heritage with a family tartan? Is she actually a lumberjack? Or is she just mildly chilly and trying to warm up? I don't know. I'll never know. Assuming that we know why anyone does anything without asking can quickly land us in hot water. Some people actually think that that's unfair. Most of the time, we are encouraged to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. But when there's so much at stake emotionally, as there is whenever love and sex enter the mix, we can be in a great hurry to avoid the blame for our own loneliness, dissatisfaction, and other assorted discomforts. We are tempted to mark down our rejection as the result of another person's malice or cruelty, when they may just have had a bad day or we just weren't their type. We need to let go of the idea that a rejection must be somebody's fault, laying all the blame on someone else who has little or no control of the kind of people they connect with, or upon oneself for not being the kind of person that person would like, is pretty silly. But like so many silly things, some feel the need to take the blame game to extremes. The next one. Better roads. So this is the part where I start dishing out a few strategies for dealing with rejections. If you're just joining us because you skipped at the beginning of the video, hello. Thank you for joining us. Here are some potentially useful options and strategies ranked along a timeline. We start out with triage. It just happened, and it sucks. It may viscerally hurt. Here's what I do. Talk to someone. Avoid the temptation to suffer in silence, and get in contact with someone you trust, a good friend or a family member. Tell them straight off what you need. That could be sympathy, empathy, distraction, or anything else. Take a minute and decide what it is you need in the moment to feel better, and then reach out to that person. If you're not sure what you need in the moment, please be patient with anyone that you go to for help, because they won't know either, and you're gonna have to figure it out either alone or together. Pro tip, as I mentioned earlier, you probably don't need to hear the person who rebuffed you called names or belittled. That's a short-term solution that can grow into a way bigger long-term problem. Help someone with something. This one is much less intuitive, but no less effective. Taking your mind off your own troubles and accomplishing something, whether that means helping somebody clean house, editing a piece of writing for somebody, can be a great source of outrospection. Outrospection is defined as discovering yourself through encounters with the world around you. Take care of something that needs attention. Another possible point of outrospection when faced with any distressing situation is dealing with something else that may not be terribly pleasant but needs to be done anyway. For me, it's anything involving paperwork or administration work or housework as well, cleaning up. I always feel more accomplished and secure and competent once I've gotten it over with. Treat yourself. Long before Parks and Recreation made it a catchphrase, no less a philosopher than St. Thomas Aquinas advocated a little treat as one way to help someone deal with a loss or bereavement. Moving on from the initial inciting action is within a day or two. You've had some time to process, but it still hurts. Get active. I am not Mr. Exercise Cures Everything, but you may find that taking a jog is a great way to clear your head, or maybe it's something like a bike ride, or a hike, or a climb. I personally find that outdoorsy stuff like canoeing or splitting firewood is a great help. Going dancing certainly counts, or just hitting the gym. Getting out of your head and into your body can work wonders in the light of a rejection. Mental stress and tension and bodily stress and tension are intimately linked, and if you can work out some of that bodily stress, you can often lighten the load on your mental stress. Create something. From today's biggest stars to the most obscure amateurs, musicians and artists draw unending inspiration from unhappy affairs of the heart. And if you feel creative, you can too. Even if you don't consider yourself especially creative, you can always sit down and sketch, splatter paint around, sculpt with clay, or even get medieval on a block of wood or stone. With the right tools, of course. Or sit down with any musical instrument you like. Even just cook something nicer than you're used to. And don't worry if you're not as good as you'd like to be. Next step. After about a week, you feel like you should be over it perhaps, but you're still feeling it deep down. Talk to someone regularly. I believe that everyone, to some degree or another, needs some variety of therapy. If that's in your budget, definitely think about it. There is no shame in seeing a therapist. Repeat that till you believe it. Otherwise, just make a standing arrangement with friends. Even just meeting up at a coffee shop or someone's house to keep one another grounded. If peopling is not your thing, you can do this digitally. There are also ways of doing this outside the traditional framework of therapy. If you are interested in doing a DIY homebrew approach to mental health, you might want to look up Project Icarus, links down below. Here's one classical approach that you can use anytime. I mean literally classical here. This is a variation on an ancient technique for problem solving used by the Stoic school of philosophers in Greece and Rome. Basically, it involves visualizing vividly an ideal advisor to help hear you out and give you some insight from a deeper perspective. Put down everything you're holding and get comfortable. I mean, comfortable. Take those good deep belly breaths that you know you ought to be taking. Feel the expansion and contraction of your abdomen as you fill it up with air like a glass starting at the bottom. And then exhaling fully. Very good. Keep breathing deeply, and you will find that you feel completely relaxed and at ease with yourself. You feel your imagination stirring. You find yourself in a room. Everything about this room, its size, shape, and color, the furniture, the view out of any windows or doors, the scents and textures of the room, every detail gives you ease and comfort. You are safe here. You are in control. You know this place. This place reminds you of your own essential goodness. In this room, seated or standing across from you, is a being, an infinitely loving, wise, and helpful advisor. They can be anything you wish, whatever will be most helpful to you. Perhaps they look like a relative passed on before you. Maybe they look like a fantasy character, or someone that you admire but have never met. Maybe they're goofy and silly and lighthearted. Maybe they're aged and serious. But again, every detail of their body, their face, their posture radiates ease and calm. I want you to tell them everything about your experiences of rejection, knowing that they see past the thoughts and actions you may feel ashamed or angry about. They see through to that inner essence of goodness and light that resides in your heart. They may reach out and touch your arm or shoulder in empathy. They listen attentively, taking in every detail and intuiting the rest perfectly. That's how wise they are. If your speech falters, whether you're talking out loud or in your inner eye, they simply wait patiently, offering just the right words of encouragement with impeccable timing. They consider your words without judgment, they consider your words without judgment, gains. They consider your words for a moment without judgment or silly games of any kind, but with sincere kindness in face and body and bearing. They ask if you want comfort, advice, support, or anything else, and they give it, either in the world of your imagination's eye, or in the finest words you could imagine, or in any other way. The stunning clarity of the message is matched only by its boundless, irrefutable wisdom, equally unimpeachable and complete love. You may find yourself silent, tearful, uplifted in transports of joy, or all of them at once. You exchange a few more words with your ideal advisor. You may embrace them, shake their hand, give any gesture of parting as you breathe deeply, and as you bid them farewell. You know that you'll be able to come back to this place and see them anytime. Still breathing deeply and regularly. Return to your normal consciousness and keep that feeling of serenity. As you ready yourself to put the advice of your stoic advisor to words. Thank you. Ooh, that was relaxing. Oh, gracious. Oh, I'm stiff now. Oh, Most importantly, get back out there. Do not obsess over one person, especially someone who has turned you down. Don't do it. Give yourself whatever time you need, but a no from one person is the chance to find a yes from someone else. It's cheesy, but there really are a lot of fish in the sea, and I personally guarantee that however unlovable you think you are, someone in their darkened bedroom is having an earth-shaking, toe-curling, cancel my appointments, Mount Vesuvius scale orgasm thinking about someone very, very much like you. Give yourself all the chances you need to find that person. And if there's ever a time that you have to reject someone, remember that pain and how gently you wish someone else had let you down. And be sure to do it right. So that's our show. Thanks for watching, and thank you for indulging me in a little guided meditation there. I hope it helped somebody, and if it did help you, I hope you'll leave a comment. Liking and subscribing definitely helps me grow the channel, and it's the easiest thing that you can do for me if you'd like to say thank you. I also have a PayPal link in the description, which would be very, very helpful if you feel like giving me a little tip. It's very much appreciated, and it all goes to help me keep the lights on and keep making this cool stuff. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon again. I could see your face, only clouds will see. Tears are in my eyes, empty like my heart. Why'd you say goodbye? Alone, I can hear our song playing for me again. Blame it on myself. Oh no, I'll blame it on the weatherman standing on the shore, calling out your name. I was here before. I can see your face. Only clouds will see. Tears are in my eyes, empty like my heart. Why'd you say goodbye?